Anatomy of a Phenomenon, a social studies report for grade 10 by Lloyd and WSJ. Concluded. During the 60s and into this decade, as young people experienced greater degrees of freedom, they began to directly encounter this phenomenon, the night floaters, often in very direct and frightening ways. The following stories were collected through interviewing some 40 Gordon E. Purdue students ranging from grade 9 to grade 13. Ed, grade 13. I heard about some kids who were parked in a dark spot in the big park down in Clarkson. Well, as you know, that's not that far from 999 Queen Street. Anyways, they're making out in the back seat, with the radio on, when there's an announcement about some mental case, a convicted murderer escaping from the hospital. The girl gets upset and demands the guy take her home, which doesn't go over well, and he's arguing with her, when she suddenly starts screaming that someone is looking at them through the window, and when the guy looks up, he sees a face staring in the driver's side window at him, a face without a body attached. They manage to crawl over the seat and start the car, the head following them the whole time with its eyes, and they peel out of there and they don't stop until they reach the lights of Trafalgar and Lakeshore, when they realize they're butt naked. Karen, grade 10. Two girls I know from Blakelock were parked down by the lake, in that deserted construction area down at the end of the third line. They were just smoking and listening to the radio, when suddenly this face appeared at the passenger side window and began mouthing, "I want to fuck you." Note, we censored this in our written report. Well, they peeled rubber, getting out of there, but the head seemed to follow along after them, like it was flying, and they realized it must be a floater, even though they'd never believed in them before. Eventually, they lost it, but it followed them all the way until they got to Lakeshore. About a week later, one of the girls woke up in her bedroom to find the same face. She was sure it was the same face, hovering over her, kissing her. She tried to fight it off, but it kept kissing her until finally she started kissing it back, and then she passed out. Later, she found out she was pregnant, but the baby died during childbirth. Patty, also grade 10. A girl was working alone in a convenience store out on Pine Grove. The store was kind of isolated, but it was a quiet neighborhood, so she wasn't worried about being by herself, and she also figured she could call her boyfriend, who was in grade 12, if there were any creeps hanging around. One night, the skinny guy comes in and buys a pack of Craven Menthol, which she thought was rather funny, as it is a ladies' brand. When he went out, she noticed that he went and sat in his old car, outside the store, rather than just driving away. It was like he was just sitting there, smoking and staring through the windshield at her. She thought about calling her boyfriend, but eventually the guy drove away. At 10 o'clock, she locked the front door and then turned out all the lights in the store. It was then that she noticed the old car had returned and was parked out by the street, away from the street light, but still visible from inside the darkened store. She figured her boyfriend was likely to show up, so she just stood in the shadows watching to see if the creep was going to try anything. If the guy was still there when her boyfriend showed up, he'd kick his ass. Suddenly, this floater appeared out of nowhere, rubbing up against the glass, actually bumping into it like it was some kind of night bug. The head looked like that of the skinny guy who'd been in earlier for cigarettes, and as she watched, she saw him actually put his lips against the glass, like he was blowing her a kiss or something. The bobber slobber slowly moved along the entire length of the store window, smearing a trail of saliva across the glass, grossing her out. She was relieved when a pair of headlights swept into the parking lot, either her boyfriend or a too-late customer. The head, of course, disappeared. At the sight of her guy's old Merc Meteor, she ran out to tell him what had happened, but the creep had already taken off, and there was no way they could catch him. A few months later, they were sitting in McDonald's when the girl saw the guy sitting in his car in the parking lot, smoking. She told her boyfriend, who went over and pulled the guy's car door open for a little chat, which included him knocking the cigarette out of the guy's mouth. The creep left rather hurriedly after that. The girl went over and, Out of curiosity, picked up the cigarette. It was a Craven menthol, of course. Conclusion. The authors of this report are unable to confirm the existence of floaters or bobs. Neither of us have ever seen one. Note: this was a lie on the part of your narrator. But rumors and stories about them have existed throughout the history of the community and among the native people before the coming of the first white settlers. As well, similar entities have been reported in Asia and Latin America. Can there be smoke without a fire, or is it all a collective hallucination? The only way forward is to find physical proof, i.e., an actual floater, willing to display their secret talents, which is highly unlikely given the horrific nature of their nocturnal activities. In the meantime, the best we can do is describe the anatomy of this branch of local folklore, itself a strange and terrible phenomenon. The end. P.S. We got an A-. After all, we couldn't produce a floater, a real live floater, now could we?